everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this panel. I see a lot of familiar faces. Good to see you here, especially my students from my class. Yay, thank you for being here. So I am Michelle Galey, and I am an assistant professor of practice here in StratCom here at Murrow, and I will be your moderator this morning. I'm excited to be here today with you and to help guide this conversation. I'm going to grab this. I got to talk with these four this morning over coffee, and you are in for a treat. These guys know what they're doing, and they have a lot of insight into what we're talking about today. So what are we talking about today? We are talking a lot about just the whole digital era and algorithms in public relations. Fascinating stuff, right? So I'm really excited for this because that's my main emphasis is PR, what I teach here at Murrow. But first I'd like to introduce everybody. I'm just gonna do really brief introductions and then I'll let them each person add to their bio, if you will. So first we have Nico Archer, and he is a StratCom. I feel like I'm really talking. Does this sound okay?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like it's echoing in my ear. Nico is a StratCom leader specializing in brand development, digital strategy, and integrated campaigns. He is a partner at DH, a social impact agency with offices in Seattle and Spokane, and his work focuses on addressing structural barriers and advancing equity across sectors. Anything you'd like to add to that, Nico?
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm very happy to be with you all today. Again, my name is Nico. I use he, they pronouns. Some of you might be interested to know that I'm also a state commissioner for the state of Washington on the LGBTQ2S Commission. And that's something that's very meaningful to me and also to DH and some of the work that we do. And within our agency, I oversee our creative brand and digital teams. So while I consult kind of across the board as a partner and part owner of the firm, I'm supporting the work of creatives. And I think where digital intersects with this conversation, just have a lot that surfaced through our team. So thank you for having me here.
Great, thanks. And then next we have Christiaan Brown. Christiaan is a WSU alum, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
He brings more than 25 years of experience in StratCom, helping organizations navigate crisis, transformation, and growth. And his work includes leadership roles with Accolade and advising brands such as UW Medicine, Microsoft, Amazon, and eBay.
I was waiting for a couple boos or around the UW part, but really excited to be here and glad that you started with the WSU piece. I feel like I'm home again. Love this university, love this school, love this town. And I've been fortunate enough, in addition to working with some of the brands that she just referenced, also had the opportunity to work with the Carson College on a couple instances. There you are, Eric. And was a member of the Alumni Association as well. So love this school and excited to meet some of you and share what we know.
Perfect. We also have Janelle Guthrie. And Janelle is not only is she a WSU alum, she also holds her APR and is a fellow PRSA member. And if any of you know what that is, that's a very big deal in the PRSA world. So we all aspire to be a fellow. She leads communications for the Building Industry Association of Washington. With more than 25 years of experience, she's held senior roles at Microsoft and in Washington state government. She currently serves on the national board of PRSA.
Thank you. And like Christiaan, I'm a very proud Coug. I was a journalism and political science major here, was active in SPJ, and didn't really get involved in public relations until after I graduated and got my first job in government. So I'll just give a big plug to PRSA. If you're making any changes or if you're graduating in public relations or journalism or any way want to break into public relations, I would say to get involved in PRSSA. We'd love to have you, and I'd love to have you join PRSA as well. So please connect. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
So true. And finally, Mary Grace Roske. She is also a WSU alum and is a marketing and comm leader in the, I think I'm saying this right, fintech space.
Financial technology.
Financial technology space, and currently leads marketing at CD Valet. Her career spans banking and philanthropy with a focus on building trusted brands through clear and compelling communications.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
The best part of being in this panel is that I have made 3 new friends, and I'm so excited about coming back. I mean, the best friends I made in my life are people I met at WSU, but being back here, I've made so many new friends, which is just so wonderful to go back to Seattle and have these new colleagues and people that I can connect with and know about. One of the things that I do in my role is I look for speaking opportunities for our executives at personal banking or personal finance and banking conferences. And I never let any of them take a slot that is the last panel discussion on the last day. Because I say nobody shows up, you guys. We're not, our value is so good. We are not taking that last slot. So the fact that you're all here and this room is relatively full makes me rethink that advice that I always give to my colleagues, that no one shows up on the last day. So thank you for validating or reaffirming my point of view about that. But as Christiaan said, I love this town, I love this school, and I love this university, and any chance I have to be able to come back and do something, it just fills my cup, it warms my heart. And so thanks for being here, and I hope you learned something from my friends and me today.
Great. Well, we're really happy that you all are here, and I think it'll be a great conversation. I have drafted some questions, and I'll start with those, but we're free to veer any way we want. And so I also open the floor to, if you have questions during a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, okay? We want this to be more conversational. So I do have my first question for Christiaan. So this is where we're at here. So the first question is, from your perspective working with brands and audiences, where do you see the line between authentic storytelling and strategic messaging? And is that line getting blurrier in this algorithm-driven environment we're in?
Thank you for the question. And I really like the topic here. And I'm, in fact, really happy to hear the underlying message come through in Anna's keynote and other conversations, even this morning with Mike, around the importance of authenticity and showing up as your true self. For me, I think authentic storytelling and strategic messaging, there really shouldn't be a separation between the two. I think at its best, strategic messaging is authentic storytelling. And I think the real concern here with algorithms and speed and performance is starting to look at those metrics ahead of what's always been most important, I think, in our industry, which is trust and being authentic, right? We are in a reputation business, and as many of you know, reputation takes a long time to build, but it can take moments for it to shatter, and you can work forever to build it back. And so I would encourage all of us that when we think about these things, that authenticity and real storytelling that is true, that aligns with the values of the organization and resonates with the audience that you're trying to reach is paramount. That is the most important piece. And then look at performance, amplification. How do we get our message to our audience following that? But the most important thing, and something that we do at my current agency at RH Strategic, is we have this formula, and it puts the story and the audience first before you even get to that point of amplification and thinking about the channels you take it in. The one caveat to that would be, when I got started in PR, it was enough just to get stories in major outlets, newspapers, TV, et cetera. But in today's environment, I think we have the added responsibility of not only landing the coverage, but getting eyeballs to that coverage. So the performance piece is important, but what value is there to drive eyeballs to a message that doesn't resonate, that isn't true to who you are, and doesn't line up with the organization's mission? So I think that's probably the most important piece.
Great. Would any of you like to add to that?
Well, I can add just a little bit. I would echo that. I mean, one of the advantages of being the last panel is you get to see everybody else's panels before you go. And the social media panel yesterday about influencers, and listening to some of them talk about how even if somebody sends them something and wants them to talk about it, if it's not authentic to their brand or what they are offering as an influencer, they will not do it. So I think, to Christiaan's point, first and foremost, be authentic, and then I think the rest will follow.
I have a quick follow-up question. Have you ever advised a client not to lean into a trend because it would feel inauthentic?
100%, and probably increasingly so. And not just trends. I think one of the things we talk about, particularly in agencies, I'm sure elsewhere too in PR, is this idea of newsjacking, right? How do we find a story that's already taking place and starting to become part of the cultural discussion? And how do we insert our brand, our point of view, our story into that in order to help drive inclusion in those stories? And so you see a lot of clients that will find moments like that. But again, I go back to what I shared earlier, reflecting back on your values and doing it in advance. In fact, one of the things we'll do is work with clients to align and do an assessment of their values, the key topics and issues that may come up, and make decisions in advance about what topics you feel comfortable commenting on, leading on, which ones you're comfortable participating in, and which ones you feel might be best just to stay back from. And I think that's the guide. Just like in crisis communications, having some of those decisions and flows and communications aligned from the beginning before the crisis hits makes that decision making easier. And it's the same way when you think about jumping on trends or participating in a conversation. Is it true to your values? Does it resonate with the audience? And does it further the business? I think are key.
Yes.
So I've seen a lot of like influencers and brands and stuff kind of get like canceled because they've made deals with like AI companies and stuff. How do you like feel about that, or how would you go about that? Because like people are like getting mad at it being like a moral and ethical like problem.
I'm happy to jump in and encourage others too. I'm gonna feel a little bit like a broken record. I would go back to yet again, is that AI? So if you're a tech company, I don't think you can live without having a conversation around AI, right? And there's going to be an important role for you to have in that discussion. Other brands are going to be viewing that perception, that engagement with AI very differently. I think you've got to look at your stakeholders and your audiences and better understand what's important to them, and then figure out where you can thread that needle a little bit as far as your engagement with it, but also having a very clear, rational message about why that you're having that engagement and how it furthers the mission of the organization. But welcome any counterpoints or other thoughts too.
I would just say that I remember back in the day when we started in this career, and this question used to kind of be, how would you feel if this was on the front page of the New York Times? How would you feel if the way you made this decision, if someone said, say, how did you decide to do that? And you told them, would you feel comfortable with it? And I think that's something brands continue to have to come back to. And as Christiaan said, this business we're in is about reputation management. And if you think about the answer to why did I align with this company or why did I align with this brand, and you feel uncomfortable or uneasy, that's something. You have to pay attention to that and really examine it from all around and come to that decision of, is this right or wrong? How would I explain this? And will I sleep tonight? Those are big, important questions to ask, not just about AI, about anything you're doing. It's on the front page of the New York Times. You've got to explain it to your grandmother at Thanksgiving. How are you going to feel? And you got to go with that gut, I think.
That's
good advice.
Great question. My next question is for Janelle. Inside organizations, how do you maintain accuracy and transparency in fast-moving digital environments, especially during a crisis situation when info is spreading in real time?
Well, I think having worked in a variety of fields, working in politics, working for the Department of Corrections, working for the Unemployment Office, there's no end to the crises that come at you at any given time. So I always kept this on my desk. It's the Murrow quote that Anna gave yesterday, but to be persuasive, we must be believable. To be believable, we must be credible. And to be credible, we must be truthful. And so underlying all of my relationships with everybody that I advise is this belief that we are constantly building our reputation. We're investing in what's called the trust bank. That's another quote that somebody else has coined, but basically you put into the trust bank every step of the way. So you're constantly building credibility. You're responding to reporters when they call. You're responding to constituents when they reach out. So you've built a level of trust. And then throughout your enterprise, I also like to keep a series of things that I link to when I'm responding to give credibility to my quotes So when she's talking about accuracy and authenticity, you're building a groundswell of goodwill around your politician that you're working for, the agency you're working for, et cetera, so that when a crisis occurs, there's already a lot of good information out there. And then you also have to build trust with the people that you're working for so that they trust you when you say, there are helicopters circling over the Monroe Corrections Center. Reporters are calling me, asking me what is going on. And when your boss says, tell them no comment, you have to have the credibility to be able to go back and say, I understand that you don't know exactly what is going on, and we don't have to know exactly what is going on, but we do have to acknowledge that something is going on and give them as much information as we can. And I think you teach that in your crisis. You have to get out there quickly with the information that you have so that you signal that you're not hiding anything and you're in the story. And then one final little thing. Recently, Molly McPherson has a podcast, and she was talking about crisis in the AI era, which I thought was really fascinating too, because she's saying not only is it getting back to a reporter, so having those good relationships with reporters is solid, but on top of it, AI is also out there as well, so you need to be responding even more quickly than before so that your message gets picked up in whatever AI is picking up out there. So she warns to look at the cues that you might be getting out of social media. We used to advise people, like, ignore the trolls. Well, ignore them at your peril. If you're seeing a number of things bubbling up, that is a precursor to a crisis that might be coming, and you should be preparing for that and be ready to respond, and even responding in real time.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I just want to affirm and appreciate your calling attention to the bank of trust. And I think back to the question that you asked about the influencer quickly losing trust in that situation. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Companies are going to make mistakes. People are going to make mistakes. People will act without all the information, and accountability will be a question. And I think what is an antidote is operating always with trust building as a key and ever-present goal, so that hopefully when you do make a mistake, your audience or the people that you're accountable to are willing to work with you, to be in conversation with you, and to rebuild and repair.
You know, I was just reflecting. I think that's a really good point, and I hadn't thought about that as far as the trolls, if you will. Because we would usually monitor, and you'd be able to see how many followers, is the conversation picking up, and sometimes it's better just to stay out of that conversation.
Yeah.
But your point is be prepared, because even if you don't engage in that conversation now, that question may come up later. And I think that's really, really smart to be taking note of that and updating your own route Q&A for executives and so forth tied to it. I think that's really smart.
One quick follow-up. How do you build that culture in your organization where speed and responsiveness don't come at that expense of accuracy? And you kind of touched on that a little bit, but could you expand a little more?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I've advised people over the years, even before AI came into the game, that I advise them using examples of other people, like, hey, here's this story where someone didn't respond in time and look at how it blew up. Or in contrast, here's an example or where somebody did respond and look at how quickly that crisis died down. So having that conversation, but I think it's also building the relationships with the leaders with whom you work and assuring them that you're prepared. So one other thing that I've learned through PRSA, and y'all probably learn in your classes, but how to put together a good communications plan in general. And so it's building trust with them as much as it is building trust with your audiences. And so once you've built that trust, you can build that culture of providing accurate and timely and authentic responses, because they trust you and they know that works for them. Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely. All right, I'm going to move on to Nico. This one's for you, Nico. As someone focused on storytelling and brand messaging, especially in your role at DH, how has the rise of algorithm-driven platforms changed the way you think about what stories get told and even those that don't get told?
Yeah, thank you for this question. This is a really important question because a lot of it has to do with power, which I'll get to in a moment. One thing that I want to highlight is that there's always been an algorithm, and so I think if we're scared of that idea or intimidated by that idea, let's remember that ever since the old maxim, if it bleeds, it leads, right? There's always been a way that we understand and follow culture enough to know what is and is not getting people's attention quickly. I think what's changed with digital communications is the speed at which that algorithm is adapting, the level of personalization that is occurring, right? The fact that every individual person has an individual feed of information curated around their personality, their biases, the apps that they use or don't use, what they're paying attention to or not. And so really appreciating that people are in a customized feed and how bias is an inherent part of that. And I think that presents both risks and opportunities. A couple of the risks I've sort of named this narrow reality that people can end up living in. And because of that, the polarization that they can be experiencing. And I think about our responsibility as communicators and the opportunities that we can unlock. If someone is trapped in a narrow reality, there's an opportunity to give them freedom, right? Freedom of choice, freedom of information, of access. And if they're locked in a cycle of polarization, there's an opportunity to restore connection to other people, to different viewpoints, and also to, I think, a sense of happiness that can come from not being in a cycle of despair that is being reinforced by the polarization that you're locked into. And so I would just sort of highlight for this room that I think in relation to the nature of this algorithm-driven landscape that we're in, we have incredible power and responsibility to shape culture. And I think at DH, being a social impact agency, this is really central to how we operate and what we think about. And I'm going to hold a couple of thoughts for later. But I think it just, kind of comes back to human connection, where people being disconnected and you can restore connection to sort of the full truth or experience of something. And also just respecting your audience's intelligence. We all know how the algorithms work. And I think the moment that we sort of sense that, oh, this is spam, right? Or this is a junk piece of communication, I'm not going to click on that. I'm going to go to the comments and see what the quick answer is that they're trying to clickbait me into. We know when brands are pandering. We know when we're pandering. And so I think I would, encourage all of you to respect your audience's intelligence, respect your sense of when you feel that you're being drawn into a behavior that feels like pandering or feels performative and just feels not authentic.
That was eye-opening for me when we talked about that this morning. It's true. It's a new tool, and we've always kind of had to deal with that spam mentality, if you will, in trying to figure out what we really should be listening to. One quick follow-up. Do you think certain stories are represented when you're working at DH and looking at your clients and so forth and helping them because they don't really perform well, if you will?
Yes, I think there's a mix. There's a mix of factors that go into that. I think that as a social impact agency, we're always centering questions of equity and representation and inclusion. So I think that we always have a natural question around where is dominant culture sort of dictating what stories are getting told and what lived experiences are getting represented, and recognizing our power to interrupt and thoughtfully consider who really needs to be at the center of the story and making sure that the communications reflect that. So that's how it's impacting our behavior. But then also, I think this is where we have the opportunity to just be really plugged into culture. We know when brands are behind the times and when they're reacting really late to a trend. We all have that sense. We don't have to wait for trends to happen to get ahead of them. I think we know, we have a sense when something will be a trend or has the potential to be. Like, we just have to look ahead, right? World Cup is coming up this summer. We know that there's going to be a lot of communications around the World Cup, around the clash of cultures sort of intersecting for the World Cup. We just went through the Olympics, and we saw the trends that sort of connected to that moment. And so I think intentionality, but also just planfulness around culture, trying to get ahead of where we sense culture might be and where the conversation will be, and just being prepared to be a part of it.
Great. Does anyone want to add anything to that? Should I move on to my next question? Oh, is there a question? Yes.
You mentioned the World Cup in Seattle. There's a pride match, specifically with Iran and Egypt, which are two countries that aren't very supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. So as you're predicting things in the future like that, how could you see that game ending up being a PR crisis or PR anything?
Yeah, well, I'll stay very high level because I think that there's many ways that you can go very deep into this topic. As my role as a state commissioner on the LGBTQ Commission, I can tell you that we're absolutely paying attention to just the meaningfulness of that moment and how people will want to hear from the commission as well in support of the community. And so there's already advanced thinking and planning about that. I know that state infrastructure for moments like this plans for disruption, right? They expect there may be protests. And so they're thinking really actively about community safety, about helping people continue to flow around disruption. And they're also being mindful about the values questions that could be called into culture, right? And I think back to what Christiaan was saying earlier, there's an opportunity for leaders and people with platforms to, when they sense a question around values is going to emerge, to be prepared and clear about what is their organizational or personal stance in relation to that value. Do they have something meaningful to offer? Do they have a role as an ally or an advocate to play? And then for them to step into that in a way that's consistent with their values.
I went to the same place when you brought up World Cup too. And then I went to the same place also about the importance of values that you were just stating. And there's an old adage that, like, let no crisis go to waste, right? Because there's always an opportunity in a crisis to educate, to reaffirm your message, your point of view, and to act and behave in a certain way. And I do think that game will create an opportunity for dialogue and discussion, not just to show what Washington and Seattle's and the US's values are, but a chance to have that conversation globally.
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, great question. All right, Mary Grace. As AI and algorithms continue to shape what people see and believe online, what role should we as PR professionals play in safeguarding trust and information quality?
Great question. And in order to answer that, you have to have a little bit of an understanding about the company that I work for, which is in the financial technology, personal finance space. And we're a marketplace called CD Valet, and we're a marketplace, like Amazon is a marketplace. And what we do is we connect consumers or savers to financial institutions so that savers can find and compare and open certificates of deposit, CDs, with the best rates and terms nationwide. So the CD is referred to by the Wall Street Journal as America's dullest investment. So my career is immersed in America's dullest investment. But I'm going to stop and I'm going to say, who knows what a CD is? Oh my God, so many. Okay, it's great. Tell me, what is a CD?
I just go by phone or on one.
Okay, that's not enough to get the gift card. I need a better answer to get the gift card. You.
I was able to tell which to earn for in
Because,
I don't know.
okay, one more, okay, over there.
You like lock your money in it, you can't.
Yes, you get my gift card. Come get my gift card,
Wow.
Starbucks gift card. So the key is with these that you lock in, you say, I'm gonna give you my money I'm gonna let you keep it for a year. So therefore you you get paid a higher interest rate. So it's America's dullest investment, sleepy product, but it's also a $3 trillion market. So millions of savers use CDs, and you can be a sleepy saver. That's one of our personas in our world, is a sleepy saver who says, yeah, I got a bunch of money and it's sitting at Bank of America and I don't know if I'm making anything on it. Or you can be a savvy saver who says, I want to go out and I want to find the best rate in the country on a 12-month CD. Those are the people that come to CD Valet and they shop at our marketplace. So the word best is really big in personal finance. You want the best mortgage rate, you want the best rate. So we have 40,000 rates from 5,000 financial institutions. So that really speaks to if you're not going to find the best at a site that has 150 rates from banks that have big budgets to advertise. We have rates on our site that are ones we get paid to put there, and we have everybody else's rate too. So coming to this question about algorithms, I found a good line here that said, PR people have got to be the stewards of trust in an environment where algorithms decide what humans see. So if a human is looking for the best CD rate so they can make the most money on their money, I want to know that if I say we have the best CD rates, we do. And we do, because we have 40,000 of them. And we go get that data fresh every single day so that it is accurate and it's true. So about 6 months ago, we made a pivot where we said we're going to stop paying as much as we do for paid Google search and paid social. We're going to pull back on that advertising, and we're going to retool our website so that we can be found easier by these answer engines. Yes, we do SEO work, we do search engine optimization work, but what does AEO look like? And AEO is all based on, not all based, much based on trust and data. So we can say we have the best data. And we can also tell people, we can tell the answer engines, we can tell Claude and Gemini and Perplexity that our data is verified. And we can tell them that we have a panel of experts who look at our data and know our data and can say that. We can say that every article we write is written by one person, edited by another person, and the rates are verified by a third person. And all these things are the trust signals that a brand sends out into the world to search engines and answer engines that say, yes, this is the best. And this is just, personal finance is the number one category of questions that answer engines get. So 40% of people go to ChatGPT and ask it personal finance questions. That's a little scary. Mm-hmm. And in your age group, it's 67% of people. And that's a huge responsibility. Money, especially people who are vulnerable and are basing their decisions about their money on AI answers. So I guess, my personal brand and the brand that we're hoping to build for CD Valet is that we have the best data. You can trust us. We view that, if we're going to raise the quality of how AI works and algorithms work, we have to increase the quality of the data that's put into it. So that's why we comb and personally go to all these sites to gather this data. So I think, what's the Google SEO or maybe AEO, based on the trust signals of EAT? Do you guys know this? So they look for experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. So those are the things that we try to build into our site when we put that out there. So when somebody types in to Google Gemini, where's the best 12-month CD rate in the state of Washington, that we're going to show up. And the trust part of it is important, and data and clarity and accuracy, all that's important. But one of the ways that relates to PR is earned media. And Christiaan mentioned this morning in our session. We work hard to get earned media in brands with in publications with high domain authority. Mm-hmm. So we can say, hey, Wall Street Journal cited our data. They're well respected. Their search engines and answer engines are going to pick up on that, and they're going to say, yeah, you're looking for the best CD rates, you should really go to CD Valet. So I just think the whole idea of thinking about that being that steward of trust before, humans don't decide what they see. The algorithms are deciding what they see. So if you're feeding data into that system, do you want your name by it? Can you feel really comfortable that your brand is putting forth the right things? At the end of the day, we are all in the business of reputation management. And that reputation management shows up in all sorts of ways. But if you always kind of think that first, that answers a lot of your gut questions. Is this the right decision? Is this going to favor and support this brand's reputation? And moreover, your personal reputation? That's a great place to start.
Want to add
I expect
anything?
you all to open CDs, by the way.
Yes,
this year.
absolutely.
Just writing that down.
Okay.
Did anyone want to add anything else to that? Anyone have any questions? I'd love to open it up for questions. Yes.
I was going to ask you, if an organization is got a high enough profile and enough resources, could they just find like a full-time person that would monitor social media? Have you ever seen that? Or
Honestly, when I hired for my social media manager at the Building Industry Association of Washington, it's only 4 of us. I argued that I needed a full-time social media manager because our members wanted us to be more cutting edge on trends. And I know that it takes a lot to put together a good social media program and to monitor and to respond. And so actually before I came to this panel, I asked my social media manager if she had any input on my question. And she's a Coug, graduated a couple years ago. I hired her even before she graduated because she had such an impressive resume. And she said, my piece of advice is don't hire an intern to do your social. You need to hire an intelligent, strategic communicator to do your social. And it has paid dividends for me, I will say.
just follow up, can that person get out ahead of things? I mean, is that their job, to monitor and get out ahead of problems?
Yeah. I think that what she did, we had a big initiative campaign a year ago, and she was out there looking at what people were saying, and she was like, in the comments and pointing them back to things. And so the way that we work together as a team is we were putting together our communication strategy around the campaign in general. In the research portion that I keep, it's old school in Word, I had links to statistics. I had things on TVW, testimony, things that would back up what we were saying, so that she had things in her holster to respond. And so she was intelligent enough and savvy enough to recognize the things that we should respond to and what we shouldn't respond to. And she had the autonomy, because we worked together and communicated a lot, to just make those decisions to respond for us.
Yes.
Eric Hollenbeck from Carson College of Business. Asking a question from kind of a practitioner standpoint. So talking a lot about social media, algorithm feeding us our curated content. I'm wondering what you're seeing within your industries in terms of a return to or greater emphasis on that organic type engagement. You had mentioned about bringing in strategic comms people to oversee social. What I'm seeing within my kind of field is that there is a greater push for the organic engagement, which I think lends to the importance of having a strategic thinker or somebody that understands your brand. But again, this is me from a practitioner side in education, marketing, so I'm wondering what you're seeing within your industries.
I might go first, if that's all right. I think these are both really interesting questions, especially speaking to a larger student audience where you're considering different careers. When it comes to social, I just want to sort of expand what we mean when we say social. I think that so much is getting collapsed into the idea of social media. And I mean, it is entertainment, it is customer service, it is media buying and advertising. It's where crisis response is happening. It's where connection and brand experience is happening. And it's where conversation is happening and more, right? where gaming is happening. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I think that we really need to allow the conversation around social to become more nuanced, to hold all those different realities for what is going on in that space. And I think that you all have an opportunity as you're entering the workforce to help future organizations that you're embedded in understand that nuance and sort of connect those your different skill sets to all those different pieces. And then back to the idea of organic content. I think ideally, social is a space for truly organic content to live and thrive. And I think when brands are behaving authentically, one could argue they're producing authentic, organic content versus like prepackaged, like decontextualized information, right? When they're responding to the culture and the moment, or when you see brands in conversation with each other and their audiences, that's organic content. And I think what brands are trying to access is are authentic creators out there who could extend their reach and their influence in truly organic ways that add value to their audiences. And again, I come back to your question about your influencer who got canceled. I think that influencers who sign up to produce essentially inorganic content will take kind of a brand hit. And those influencers who are able to really align their voice, their values, their platform with a brand that makes sense for them, I think that's where their content has the better chance of thriving.
Can I? Yeah, only because I'm starting to pick up on certain themes. And I think this goes back to even what Mark said earlier about just how powerful and strong this college is in general. But we're hearing from Mike Flood earlier that people are not changing was his thing, right? Like algorithms, everything else is changing. But there's certain fundamentals of what we do that don't change. Anna spoke about the power of empathy, right? And so one of the things we think about in communications for brands is how do they stand out? How do they break through that noise? And often it's about running against the crowd, not going where everyone else is. And in a day when everyone is so focused on digital and technology and speed, those brands that can speak authentically and can speak in a manner that is different from everyone else, they stand out. And it's to the point where even media training executives now, I'm far more focused on helping them deliver a message that's true to who they are than sounding polished. I think polished answers these days, it feels synthetic, it doesn't feel real. We're tired of seeing people come through in our social feeds and not knowing who they represent. And I think we're starving for that authenticity. And so I would just encourage you, I imagine it could be scary coming into the job market right now for a variety of reasons. I think things are changing quickly, but we also know that AI is having an impact, particularly on entry-level roles. And so I would just say, trust your gut. And that gut is built on experience. So the best thing you can do is get experience anywhere you can, because not only do you have a trust bank, but you have like an experience bank that helps build that gut instinct. And AI won't be able to replace intuition. It won't be able to ever understand the full context of a situation in a way that you do, and that history and that experience. And so go out there and thrive and get that experience, but be comfortable that the fundamentals of what we do haven't changed. It's just there's new models, there's new ways and new channels to get that message out, but the fundamentals remain.
I think related to that is this, that being that authentic, genuine, real self, is that AI operates the best in natural language. And so one of the things that all these websites are doing to retool themselves for an AI world is they're going back and they're writing like people talk. So you're going, it just comes back to that kind of authentic, that crazy, there was this thing on LinkedIn the other day that was kind of making fun of LinkedIn, and it was a dog, and the dog was talking about, there was a version of the dog telling the story, was I ate the sandwich. And then there was the LinkedIn version where it said, I acquired the lunch asset, and this is due to my perseverance and my excellence, and I want to thank all these people, versus I ate the sandwich. In that world, that AI world that's telling us to be natural and write like people talk, it's the same, it comes back to that same, just be who you are, be authentic, be genuine, hold true to that. That theme just kind of shows up on a whole bunch of levels in an AI world, even though the technology is incredibly complex. And Nico said, well, we all know what the algorithms work. I don't know how the algorithms work. I have no idea how they work, but I know what I need to do to write for them and read for them, so that they find me. But just coming back to that, being really good at the basics and being simple and simply eating the sandwich and not making it a lot more complicated than it is. So.
Love that. Good question there.
Oh, good. I think we have time for one more question because I know we're going to get over to that closing luncheon, right? Okay, so absolutely.
I think in today's political climate, there's a big question of whether brands, big or small, should speak out. And how, from the PR side, do y'all feel about whether they should or not?
I'm happy to say, from the PRSA standpoint, recently we went through a big conversation around this because there are lots of people wanting to speak out on a lot of different things. And we went through and looked at our code of ethics and when it makes sense to respond and when it doesn't make sense to respond. Because I think, as somebody said earlier, you can do yourself more damage by responding to something that really isn't in your lane. Then you can, it can look very inauthentic if you respond to something that's not something that you should be responding to. So, I think there is that balance. And for us at PRSA, we went back to the code of ethics and looked at what pertains to our industry and our practice and the world of public relations, and that's where we limit where we respond.
I might weigh in on this as well and just offer that I think a tactic of politicians is to inflame and incite, and I think that as a savvy communicator, you need to be aware of when there's a risk of being drawn in reactively to somebody else's agenda. Now, that being said, and Janelle, I'm trying to find your comment, but you had a point earlier about acknowledging that something is going on, and you don't need to know everything, right? And so I think that when there's a political context, that really does impact your audience, right? Or impacts your sector, or impacts the world or lane that you're in. I think that you do have a responsibility to acknowledge, hey, something's going on, and even just being open with your audience that you might be forming a point of view if you don't have one already, or that you're listening for their point of view, I think would be important.
I so love this question, and it opens up a few different things. Again, the need to go back to your values and your audience and understanding where that message lands. But something interesting about this political climate is we got to see what brands really meant what they were out there saying before, and which ones were using it just as a marketing tactic. And so I've taken a little bit of some joy in watching and seeing that, because you are seeing brands like Costco that will stand by what they've put out there and will stand up to it because it's true to who they are. And I just realized, I think the differentiator, the superpower, Mark talked earlier about how everybody has superpower. I think the superpower AI natives have is your BS detector is so damn good. I mean, I brought a newsletter home and set it down on my front desk, and my son walked up, he goes, AI wrote that. And I'm like, he didn't even read it. I'm like, how? It's like, well, you can just tell, look at this and look at this. I think, so again, being true to who you are, I think folks growing up in this age and this time are able to see what's authentic and what's not. Mm-hmm. And I think for you coming into the PR profession and having that experience and be able to sniff that out and encourage and counsel your executives, your clients, or whomever to do, again, what is authentic and true. Again, it's going back to those fundamentals, but doing it with the added insight that you all have of knowing what's bullshit and what's not.
Final closing remarks. My perspective, view AI as a research assistant, but not as a decision maker. A thought companion was the term that Nico used earlier that we all really loved. Disclose when you use it, because I like to work with people who are resourceful. And if they told me, hey, I learned this from AI, I'm like, hey, that was resourceful. And then tell me how you verified it, tell me how you fact checked it. But it's here, it's with us, and I think that was that line. PR people are the stewards of trust in an environment where algorithms decide what humans see. So your job is to be that steward of trust. At the end of the day, we're in the reputation management business, and that is key to the success of us as individuals and the key to the success of the brands that we work on behalf of.
Here, here.
Great. Thank you.